Hello, I'm JW. Today is another project and I'm going to put this together from a selection of parts, and what we're going to be making is a solder fume extractor, and this is the kind of thing which you would just use to remove the disgusting fumes given off whenever you use a soldering iron and solder with flux inside. And just to demonstrate there, I've got the soldering on here and some solder, and if you just apply the solder to the end here, you'll see that all of this smoke is given off. And what that smoke is basically the flux inside the solder burning away and turning into some kind of disgusting smoke. Now, and of course, it's not the actual solder itself. That's obviously made of metal, lead and tin, or maybe just tin if it's the lead-free variety. But of course, the flux in there is burning away, and who knows what those toxic gases might do if you breathe them in. And even if you're going to use solder without it in, like in that solder pot we did a while ago, you're going to have to use flux on the actual pins themselves, so again, the same problem is going to apply. Now, of course, you can just go and buy a fume extractor from the shops, but that's far too expensive, and the one we're going to make is going to be considerably better than the cheap end things that you can get. Now, let's just have a quick look at some of the things you could actually buy to filter away solder fumes. And at the bottom of the market, we've got this thing here. This is basically just a little desktop thing. That's about 6 inches across. And it's a very small piece of filter material with a fan behind it, and the fan is one of those sort of computer type things you would normally find for cooling. Now, the only benefit of this kind of thing is the price, $15.99 there, so certainly a very cheap thing, but of course it's not going to do a great deal of filtering because the fan is quite small and the filter material itself is tiny and it's going to become very clogged pretty much straight away. So while it's cheap, not really going to do a great deal, we can surely do much better than that. And then at the other end of the market, you get things like this, and this is basically a big box that stands on the floor and has a hose, or in this case it's got 2 hoses, and you put those where you're actually doing the soldering, and then the box has a big fan in there, and obviously a much larger filter in there to remove all of the unpleasant things. And of course this is far superior to that little tiny thing, but of course look at the price here, this one £473, clearly a very expensive piece of equipment. Now, probably that's fine if you're going to be doing soldering all day, every day, but as we don't do that here very much, then that's way over the top, something we're not going to be paying for. And bearing in mind, that's not even any particularly well-known brand or anything, it's just some generic thing from that particular website. If we have a look here at some, say, Metcal options there, so you've got the filter unit at the bottom there, 700 odd pounds. The filter to go in it is £108 just for the replacement filter unit only. So again, you're looking at a big pile of money. And again, if you're doing soldering all the time, well, probably fine, but say that's not what we're doing here. And there doesn't seem to be anything really in the between those two things. It's either cheap and very nasty, or good quality, but of course very expensive. And the final point there to show you how fairly useless those bench size ones are. We've got a datasheet here from one of those ones, which is just a little bit of filter material. This is a Dura tool one, but of course they're all very similar, made in China or somewhere. Now we can have a look here at the specifications of the actual carbon filter in this thing, and you can see the size there, 130mm or about 5 inches, and 10mm thick, or basically less than half an inch. So pretty obviously a very small piece, not going to be doing a great deal of filtering. And in terms of the amount of carbon in it, activated carbon filter 7 grams, so basically next to nothing. And it can absorb up to 2 grams of pollution, which again is pretty much zero. And while you can replace the filter, you're going to be replacing that every day, assuming you want it to actually filter anything and not just become clogged up and be fairly useless. So cheap, but unfortunately pretty nasty as well. And of course we can do much better than that. Now we're actually going to be making something equivalent to those high-end devices. Maybe not quite as good, but certainly far better than those little cheapo bench size things. And the parts for these actually come in at far less than £100. So although it's not free, it's still massively less than those £800 plus things that we just had a look at. And just have a quick look at the parts we've got here. First of all, we're going to need some kind of fan to actually move the air, and this is actually by far the most expensive component. And this fan we've got here, it's the sort of thing that you might say fit in your loft to extract fumes from your bathroom or whatever. And this particular one was from a company on eBay, and it's actually been sold so you can ventilate rooms where you're growing plants and things, should you wish to convert your entire house into some kind of greenhouse or whatever. And I chose this particular one because, as you can see on the front here, it's actually a mixed flow which means it's better than the standard axial fans, but not quite as good as the centrifugal variety. Axial ones aren't very good at pushing air at reasonable pressure. The centrifugal ones are very good at that, but they tend to be extremely large and very noisy. This is sort of a compromise between the two. So there's the blades in there, and of course air goes in one end and comes out the other. And this particular one also comes with a mains lead already fitted, and it also has the plug on the end, so that saves getting a mains lead and plug separately. So it already comes with that. And so that's the most expensive item. That one was £30. Again, not huge amounts of money. So that's what's going to be moving the air. And then we're going to require some kind of filter. So what we have here is this material, and this comes in quite a large piece, as you can see. And this is actually what's sold put in those cooker hood type of extractors or range extractors if you're in another country. Again, this is just a generic one. It's not specific to any particular model, and it's some kind of sort of polyester-y type fleece material. Again, this is very cheap, particularly if you buy, say, just a generic variety. Here's the one that's in its actual wrapper there. And this is literally only just a few pounds for the entire box. So again, that's a very cheap item. So we've got this great big sheet of this. And again, pretty obviously, the size of this is going to be far more effective than those piddling little desk-sized things that are only a few inches across. So a lot more filtering capacity there. Now, another kind of filter which we're going to need is a carbon filter, because of course that's only just for removing sort of particles and whatever. Carbon filters have a much bigger surface area. And what we've got for these is some of these. Now, these are again designed for kitchen extractors, and these are just again generic ones you can buy to fit in a whole different range of these things. And basically it's just a plastic form, a bit of sort of mesh there to hold it in, and it's got all the activated carbon granules contained inside. So again, got a couple of those, both the same. Again, these are not any specific brand, they're just one that seemed to be fairly common and fit a whole load of different extractors, so should be readily available in the future. And again, if you look at the size of this compared to that little tiny desktop thing, massively more surface area, and of course the weight of it, it's got far more carbon in it than that little piece of basically cloth in those desktop varieties. So that's the actual filtering elements. And another couple of things here we've got, as well as the actual fan, we're going to need some kind of pipe to fit up on the desk there and place near to where the soldering is going on. And what we've actually got here is something, this came from Banggood, and it's something designed for a vehicle. Apparently it's some kind of air intake thing. Obviously we're not using it on the vehicle and it's being repurposed for something else, so just have a look inside. And basically what we've got here, it's a corrugated tube, it's got two sort of ends on it there, and actually it does expand and you can bend it to whatever shape you want. And so it's got these ends on, we can probably screw that to like a plate or a weight to sit it on the desk. And it's plastic and it will stay in its shape reasonably well without too much trouble. So again, it's going to be fairly easy to position. So one end of that on the table, and of course the other end we're going to attach into the filtering box. And again, this was only fairly cheap, it came directly from China, but to get any kind of tubing or something like that would do. Now, to actually put these things in, we're going to need some kind of a box, and this is going to go on the floor. And here's the box that we have in this particular case. So it's quite a large thing here, as you can see, and it's basically just a solid plastic box, and it's one of these things you buy to basically store your clothing or whatever in your house. This came from the Range in the UK, and again this was only like £8 or something. As you see, it's a pretty substantial thing. So we're going to be putting the fan in here, and we've also got inside here, probably see a couple of plastic pieces, so that's where the air will be exhausting out through the side. So I've got one of them, and then to put the actual filters in over here, it's another one of these plastic boxes. Now this is basically the same size, only it's obviously a lot shallower. Same make there, and again this is the sort of thing you put your winter clothes in and shove under the bed or whatever. Now this is where I'm actually going to put the filters in, so I'm going to mount those at the bottom here, the two round things in there, and then put the white fleece material over the top, and then in the lid here we're going to fix the inlet pipe, so that's where the air would go in, so it obviously goes through the filter material and into the bottom container. And this lid again comes with it. In fact, the bottom box came with a lid as well, so we've actually got a spare lid. And in terms of fitting this in, it just so happens that these two are the same size, I've just assembled this together over here. You can see that one actually fits very tightly into the top of the other one. So then we'll have the fan and things in the bottom here, filters on this middle layer here, and then the lid on top with the air inlet. And this means we need to take the lid off and change the filters as required. And then in terms of the bottom, all we're going to need is just a hole on the side for the air to come out, and another little hole for the electric cable to go through. So that's a quick look at the components there, and say a list of all that stuff is in the description to this video, so you can have a look there for more details on those. So what we need to do now is obviously make a few holes in those plastic boxes and then put all of this stuff inside and see how well it works. Now it's several days later and I've already done some of the assembly parts here. So this is the lid from one of those boxes. There were two, both the same. I only need one in this application. And I've taken that metal end from the corrugated pipe there, cut a hole through from the plastic there, shoved it through from the back and basically just glued it in with this construction adhesive here. And again, put some on the top there because obviously we want this to be as airtight as possible. We want obviously the air to be drawn through the middle and not via the cracks and whatever around the edge. This is actually water here because I had to bring it in from outside through the rain there, but that's the basic lid there. This is the smaller of the two boxes, also the shallow one there. And what I've got here then, I've just cut a hole in the bottom. This plastic turned out to be horrendously brittle, so it did not quite go according to plan. But glued these pieces of timber on the bottom, just a couple of plates there to reinforce the middle. The same pink construction adhesive, so that's stuck all around there. And then because the actual filters are circular, just cut this piece of cardboard, which will just sit in the bottom like that. And then the two filters, which are these carbon things here, which will just sit over that. And then the other one is instead of the wrapping, that's the same there. And then we'll just fix those two down. The card will just serve as a sort of a gasket between the two, so it does actually seal down. And when it comes to replacing these things, you can just cut out a new bit of cardboard. No problem with that. So those will sit in there then. Now this is the lower box here, and I've cut a hole in the side there, just a round one, and glued in that outlet grill there. Again, same pink adhesive there, just much easier than putting screws and all that bother. And again, we want that to be again airtight as possible, hence it was just glued it in. There was a bit of a split there because again the plastic is horribly brittle on these boxes, but then that's what you get when you buy cheap plastic rubbish. Now the fan in the middle here actually has a separate bracket, so that's the actual fan part there. And then at the end we've actually just got these two pieces here, which obviously is where the ducting will attach to. And again, I've just glued this into the bottom using that same pink construction adhesive. It gives us a bit of flexibility because the base of the box obviously is not totally solid, so hopefully that'll minimise any kind of vibration. And essentially the air will come out of here and through outside there, and then this side will just be open, so it will draw air in from this, and of course from the other box, which we're going to put on the top. These clamps here are just what basically holds the motor in the middle. And to attach it to the actual outlet here, I've just got a short piece of this flexible ducting. You can buy this. This was just a bit left over from some other work, but you can buy this generally in like 1 or 3 metre lengths. Incredibly cheap, just basically plastic with a spiral metal bit going around. So that piece will just go over the end over there, and then we'll put another piece over the end of this. Now this is 4-inch ducting or 100mm, as is this hole here, or at least this is designed to fit inside of this. We're going to need this adapter here because this is actually a 5-inch. So essentially here this will just go over like that. And then of course the larger piece will fit over the end of the fan like that. So that would just connect the two. I could have just put this straight through, but then of course that would mean this was going to be extremely rigidly fixed. So of course vibration and noise could be an issue there. And also then there's the question of getting these two precisely aligned with the hole and all that. So just easier to use a very short bit of that. Probably cut this down a bit as that is probably too long. Now to attach this to the end here, just need a cable tie, so I can just place that around. And then we'll just tighten that down over that, which will secure the plastic ducting in place. So that's fixed on the end there. And then we'll do the same thing, of course, for this piece. And then this bit here, which will actually just go over the top there, and just put some tape around, which will again secure that in position. Now the cable for the fan, of course, has to come out through the side of the case. And previously we saw that this did actually come with the mains lead already attached. Again, we want this to be airtight, so what we've got here in the side is actually a hole I've drilled. Let's turn that so you see there's the little hole down there. 20mm hole, and to go in the hole we've got one of these, so just a 20mm cable gland. So cable goes through the middle, that goes in the hole, it's got a rubber seal to seal up against that, and then when this is tightened down that will compress in there and seal tightly around the cable. Now normally these things go in from either side, but in this case we're going to put it so that the tightening part is on the inside, like that. So it will sort of thread into the plastic, but we'll put the nut on the outside obviously later. And we're going to put it on the inside because if we left that on the outside we'd have all that piece sticking out, which of course could easily be broken off. But of course by doing it this way, all we're going to have on the outside is basically just the little nut, so of course less likely to be damaged, and bearing in mind this stuff is not the most sturdy thing in the world. So we'll just tighten that up. And again, it just needs to be so it compresses the rubber seal. So that is obviously airtight. So next thing to do then is just connect the ducting here. We'll put the motor in the middle, pop the two clamps on, and then pass the cable through there. And to do that, we'll just simply remove the plug from the end, shove the wire through, and then put the plug back on after that. So here's the actual motor here with the wire pre-attached, and we'll just thread it through the gland in the side there. And this just basically slots down between this plastic frame here. Just need to make sure it's in the right direction. Obviously we want the air going out of this side, so pointing that way. That just slots down in the middle, and we can just feed any spare cable through the side. And this thing just needs to be tightened down until it's sealed on the cable, so we've got the sort of airtight seal. So leave a moderate amount of bit inside to tighten this up. And we'll see now that that has secured onto the cable, and see the rubber sealer just poked around the edge, so that's now sealed in. Now to fix the fan in place, it's just these two plastic things here. One end just clips over there, and then the other end clips over on this grey piece here, and that folds up and basically secures it in place. And a little screw goes in there just to stop this being unfolded. So just go down there and hook in position. Under there, that just clips in, and the other side is exactly the same. So we'll just hook on at the back there, and essentially it's the Cray clip goes underneath, and then that snaps up into place. So the bottom's now complete, but of course we do need to put the plug back on the end, so we'll do that now. And of course the wires are already the right length because that's where they just simply came out of. So just thread this under here. Now this has a 13 amp fuse in, which you might say, well, that's far too big for a fan, and it probably is, but let's just see what size this wire is to see if they've actually given us the wrong fuse. So yeah, this is 3-core 0.75 square millimeters, so of course we'll need to be changing this fuse for the proper 3 amp rating, as 13 is far too big. And that is what it was supplied with, so whoever wired it up obviously neither knew or cared. So put the proper 3 amp fuse in there, like that. And then we'll just put the lid on, and of course secure that in position. So next we'll have a look at the top section, which is this smaller box. And we've got the two filters here. This one I've already unwrapped. This one of course still wrapped in its plastic. So these are actually for cooker hoods. I chose these ones because they're a very common size, so therefore readily available for when they need replacement. And these are also very cheap, so we don't want to buy some horrendously expensive thing that costs tens of pounds to replace, such as if you had a Neff cooker hood, for example, where the filters cost anything up to £70 or £80 each. So as we saw before then, we've got this timber in the bottom. We use this sort of cardboard as a gasket there, just to take up any variance between the plastic edge and the plastic and timber underneath. And to fix these in, originally of course in the cooker hood there was this sort of plastic piece here which was supposed to sort of twist or lock in some fashion, but obviously we're not using it with that. But what we can do is just to take this, which again has that thing which sort of fits in there, and just put a screw actually through the centre. Let me press that piece of junk out of the way. Just put a screw through there, and then we can just screw down through here into the timber underneath just to fix that in position. So again, that's fairly straightforward. And of course when it comes to replace, it's just a question of doing a couple of screws and taking those out. So we'll place that down in the middle. And then we just tighten down the screw into the timber, and that will obviously just hold the thing in place. And obviously the other one we're going to do precisely the same. So that seems reasonable, and let's hope we haven't just screwed into the desk, because that could be embarrassing. No, it's just poked through a little bit there, but that's fine. So as you see, those are now securely locked in position, and we've got a reasonable seal around the edge there with the cardboard just acting as a sort of gasket or whatever for that. So that's pretty much the top half assembled, and then the next thing to do is just pull all this stuff together and attach the inlet pipe to the top and see if this thing actually works. So for the top there, I've got that here, and we want to put this white filtering material in there. In theory we could just use those, I mean they're going to filter just as well, but this would just stop any larger particles of material going through there. So I just want to arrange some of this so it's sort of reasonably well covered over that. We could possibly trim that down or something. It doesn't fit particularly well that way, so is the best way to actually fold it so it does fit in. That will do. So again, we'll just press that in like that. Now the lid for this will actually just clip on like that, and this is a pretty close fitting lid anyhow, so again, we don't have to really do much else with that bit. This is the actual box here, so we'll just remove the flex from it. And because these are the same size in terms of the dimensions that way, the top of this should actually just press down in here. And if you've ever been to a shop to buy any of these, when getting them from a big stack, you'll know that once they're pressed together, they're next to impossible to get apart, because these literally just ram in, and then you can't actually get the thing apart even in the shop. So again, that's a pretty good airtight seal. And then the only part remaining is just this black pipe here, which will just slide over the top of this, presumably this is aluminium section. This did have those sort of clamps around here, but I've removed those because they weren't actually doing a lot. These are actually tapered anyhow, so it does make a reasonably tight fit into the end of that anyhow, so that's fine. So we'll just stick that over the end here, and of course that will be the inlet here for the fumes to go in. Now just put it on the floor there. Now the plan for this is so it goes under the table at the back, and then this piece will come up behind the desk, and then obviously the hose onto the desk that way. So I put it this way just so you can actually see the thing. So let's just plug it in and see how noisy it is. Well, it obviously makes a noise, but that's certainly not too bad. And just put the microphone near the end of it. So again, we're not talking like massive amounts of noise, it's obviously going to make some kind of sound. So of course air will go in here, and it then comes out at the side here. Yeah, and there's a reasonable amount of breeze coming out of there. So of course the question is then, does it actually suck up any kind of fume? So let's get some solder here. And then we can melt some on the iron here and see where the fumes go. So if we do it up here away from the inlet, we should get the smoke sort of pouring up there. Yeah, that's fairly revolting. Now if we do it here, we should see the smoke being sucked in. And yeah, that's certainly going in there. It's going a bit closer, so it'll be a bit easier to see that. So here's a bit of a closer view. That's the wire for the iron hanging down there. So if we do it just in front of here, see that all the fumes are being obviously drawn away into the duct there. Which of course is what we want, because obviously we don't want to be breathing this stuff in. The whole point is so that we get rid of them and do not breathe it in. And if we go a moderate distance away there, see it's still going obviously into the vent area, so the idea is put the circuit board or whatever in front, and obviously that would then suck the fumes in. And in terms of the sort of air inlet, just got a it's an envelope, actually just a paper there. It will obviously hold that on there pretty well, so yeah, we've got a reasonable amount of suction going on there. Also, we won't be sucking the actual circuit board off the table, so that seems entirely reasonable. So that's the solder fume extractor. So total cost about £70. That's sort of 10 times less than buying the equivalent thing from one of those manufacturers we looked at earlier. And in terms of noise, I mean, it's on now, so it's obviously making a noise, but certainly not exactly deafening the place out. And if you just unplug it, then you can see obviously it's much quieter without. But obviously even if you bought a 500, £600 or whatever pounds one, it's still going to make a noise anyway, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. So that's it for this particular project, and until next time, thanks for watching.